too. Okay, everyone, we are recording this evening. For those of you who might not know me, although I think probably most of you do, I'm Jennifer Hurl. Most people call me Jen. I'm the archivist here at the Myersdale Public Library. And thank you all for coming. I know we have kind of a good variety of Maple people here. Maple Festival directors, Maple Camp people, former directors, the Maple Queen. So thank you all. And I had mentioned earlier, part of what we'd like to do tonight is encourage anyone to share their memories as we go along, or maybe at the end we can have a little, 10-15 minute discussion session just on some of your favorite memories of the Maple Festival, because I'm sure everyone here has probably been to the festival at least once and is involved with Maple. So, don't be bashful. That's part of the aim this evening. So our program tonight is appropriately titled Maple Festival Memories. And another main thing that we want to do is introduce all of you to the collection we have online of all of our Maple Festival photographs. So this project actually dates back, I guess it's 5 years now. A lot's happened in 5 years. But this all started back in 2018. Our library had obtained equipment from the district library in Johnstown to take on a little project called Scan PA. And basically the purpose of that project was to take things like photo negatives, old VHS tapes, digitize items that could be digitized. We couldn't do that with anything that was under copyright, but we digitized everything from wedding videos filmed by a family member to photographs to different little pieces of some of our collections. And at that time, the festival got word that we were doing this, the festival directors, and around the same time, they had found, Susie Decker came to me, and they had found a big batch of 35 millimeter slides down in the closet in the festival office. And she brought those, and we worked to digitize them. There were about 400 of those. We digitized them with their permission. And most of those photographs of the festival were dated anywhere from there are a few from the late 1950s up through the 60s, 70s, and 1980s. And that's one of them. That one's from 82. Most of them were actually dated. A few weren't. Here are a few of those. For those of you who might not know, our Maple Festival dates back to 1948, so I'm pretty confident the festival is older than anyone in this room. Which, no, that's right, not Janet. Not Janet, yeah, because yeah, I knew that. All right, so, but in all seriousness, a festival that's lasted 75 years is kind of a big deal. I'm not sure if there's another local festival that's lasted 75 years. Is there?
I think the
County Fair.
The Oddfellows Picnic, I think, has the record as being the oldest, because it was 100 years several years ago.
In Kingwood, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And the fair.
And the county fair is older.
The fair's older. Yeah. But a lot of festivals have come and gone over the years, and our Maple Festival fortunately has lasted. Those two images are from 1969. The Tam O'Shanners are no longer. Some of you, I don't know, was anyone here in the Tam O'Shanners? Or
Connie Howard was.
Connie Bowman.
yes, I've talked with her about being in the Tam O'Shanners, yes. And I had a friend, I graduated high school in 1991 from Berlin, and I had a friend who was in the Tam O'Shanners. I can't remember off the top of my head when they broke up. But those are a couple scenes from the '69 festival that were on slides and we digitized. And this is another one from 1969. And what's really neat about some of these parade pictures in particular is you get, a clip of the street scene. So you can see some of the things that There's Patsy's Tavern, the old, I guess it would have been the Acme building, the gas station that's now where Sheetz is. Well, Dunkus's is there.
It doesn't have a motel yet.
Was it just a restaurant?
It was only a restaurant till '72. They added them.
Okay, okay. The old library building, I think you'd be able to see that in there. It can be a little it can be a little sad too looking through them because you see things that, oh yeah, that's gone now. But they're interesting. And of course, we wouldn't have the Maple Festival without the maple industry, right? Maple camp people here. These photographs, or at least the larger one, a couple of these slides were actually images taken by Dave Breen, a local photographer. The larger one had his name on it. The smaller one didn't, but I suspect maybe that was. Jason, do any of those look familiar to you as to?
I'm pretty sure the one on the left is Dale Jeffrey.
Okay,
And
I think it might be,
I
yeah.
think that's Dale himself in that photo. And then I presume probably the one on the right's Wagner's too.
Okay. And that's, those are kind of nice
And that,
with the snow.
probably that picture is going up Tubby
Okay,
before you get to the first bridge, before you get to Wagner's, to the house.
Okay.
So just out of the frame is probably Dorothy's house.
okay. Now, is it Linda? Do any of those look familiar to you, or? And these were just a couple other snapshots I thought were nice. The kitchen at Maple Manor. I personally have volunteered in the manor for years. As a matter of fact, the lady who recruited my husband Martin and I to do that is sitting there, Jan. Jan knows the manor very well, and I do usually when people come through, usually I'm somewhere hovering near the front door, letting people in, and I always tell them, 9 chances out of 10 the kitchen's going to be your favorite room. I guess every now and then there might be someone who likes another room better, but the kitchen's kind of the best spot. An old scene from the country store. Anyone know who that guy might be in the country store? I meant to bring a scratch pad out with me just in case.
I think this is neat because that lady's in the mirror. She's on there twice.
Yeah, she
Her
is.
reflection.
You know what? And I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
I didn't
That's
notice
a pretty
that.
cool picture.
Sometimes these photographs, the more you look, the more you see, the more you notice the little details.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so I already kind of mentioned this, but this is kind of all about bringing history to light and taking, these old, it's kind of like Susie said when she found these negatives, they're wonderful to have, but if they're just sitting in a box in a closet, they're only going to be enjoyed so much. So this is actually a one of the old plastic canisters that held the film, and that's one of the ways those negatives came to us when Susie brought them. And that's one up close. I mean, when you hold the negatives up to the light, you can kind of get an idea of what's on them, but especially when they're the tiny 35 millimeter, it can be kind of tricky. And there's our image after being scanned. And a lot of what we do here, as anyone associated with Maple knows, right? Whether it's the festival, whether it's Maple Camp and Maple Production, if you don't have people willing to step up and volunteer, do a little something just for the personal gratification of it, a lot of things wouldn't happen. The festival wouldn't continue for 76 years now if it weren't for volunteers. Maple production probably wouldn't, and so much of what we do here at the library wouldn't either. This is my volunteer, one of my volunteers, Linda Marker, and there you can see her taking the little 35 millimeter slides and putting them in a scanner that's capable of digitizing the slides. Sometimes it takes different scanners to digitize different images, different size images. But then, after the images are digitized, what do we ultimately like to do? We like to share them. But that too can be time consuming. So, back in 2021, we applied for each year the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission awards preservation grants, historical archives and records care grants. And in 2021, we applied with help from some of our board members and our friends of the library, and we got it. Applying for grants is always interesting because you apply and then you sit back and you wait a couple months and you have to lay out a game plan, you know, if we get this money, this is what we're going to do, and all the while you're not sure if you're even going to get the money. But we got a $5,000 grant, and through that we were able to digitize nearly 500 festival photographs. And if you recall, at the beginning of my presentation I mentioned that Susie had brought over about 400, but they found more. So we were able to digitize them all and make them viewable to everyone. And part of this program's goal is to kind of let you know how you can pretty easily do that inside the Power Library. And you, this is actually already a little outdated. I put this slideshow together, well, over time, over the past few weeks, and we now have 8 collections inside the Power Library. And the Power Library is a free, the Pennsylvania Power Library, it's a free online library. There are some things that you need a library card to access through the Power Library, right,
Yes,
Terry? And
yes.
yeah, Terry knows a little more about those things. Did you want to mention any of those?
There's so many things in the Power Library. If you're ever trying to entertain a young child, there's book flicks and true flicks that are like videos and books paired together. There's resources, small engine maintenance. If your lawnmower breaks down, there are manuals for car repair. There's all kinds of research materials for folks who are doing, like students doing research papers. There are newspapers available, just all sorts of stuff. And most people don't know or take advantage of all that's there, but there's some really neat stuff if you explore it. And I think photos and documents you can get into without a library card, but the paid, a lot of these databases for the academic articles and stuff, they're paid subscriptions, which the state furnishes to that people can use, but you have to have a card to access them.
Yeah, but it's all free to a patron.
But it is free.
Yeah,
It's all free.
Now, PA Photos and Documents is the section of the Power Library where these historical type of collections are. We had, our original collection is a large, and I mean over time I could do a program on all of these really. Our original collection is a large photograph collection, 300 some photographs of the first few centuries of Myersdale and surrounding areas. That one was done while Cynthia Mason was here, heading up the Pennsylvania room. That was already built when I began. Our Maple Festival Memories collection, our library history collection, and our Southern Somerset Counties collections all were built through this PHMC grant. And then we have a couple of newer ones too. We have one where they pulled there are actually about a dozen or so photographs in the first collection that feature African Americans in this area, and they pulled those and kind of made them their own collection. And then we have one documenting all of the I can't say all of the African American burials in Somerset County, but the ones that we've been able to document through death records. At one point in time in the early 1900s, there was a very active African American community here in Myersdale, and that's something a lot of people don't realize too. We have one tiny collection. The collections can be very small. Does anyone know Frank Lee from Garrett? Frank's a character. He had an old Garrett, I think it's 1939, Garrett High School yearbook. It was his aunt's. She passed away. He ended up with it, and he let us borrow it. And Linda scanned it with an overhead scanner that we obtained from the state. They sent it to us so we could work on building collections. And that 1939 Garrett yearbook is in there, and you can flip through it online. And then our latest collection that isn't mentioned on here, it just launched, and it's a collection in the works, is an old obituary scrapbook collection. There was a man named, I don't know if the name William Wolfley sounds familiar to any of you. He was from Salisbury. I'm sorry?
Didn't he have a store? Or he was in that one store was called Welfleys.
Well, that might have been part of his family.
Yeah.
He ended up in Somerset, and he was mayor of Somerset for like 19 terms. He died in 1920 in Somerset. Never married, kind of a kept himself kind of guy from what I've read. And he kept all these scrapbooks. He would cut obituaries out of the newspaper and paste them into these old books. And we have 10 of them. That in itself is a fascinating story. Apparently, he got sick, and they moved him out of his apartment. He turned around and he looked back on this big library collection, and he was like, "Farewell, old friends." And off he went. And then when he died, as the story goes, his scrapbooks got tossed, but someone retrieved them, and somehow we ended up with 10 obituary scrapbooks and 2 marriage scrapbooks he kept. I suspect somehow Marguerite Copley had a hand in that. Springs has a bunch of them. The Springs Historical Society has a bunch, but theirs aren't so much local. There are other things he clipped from different areas. So Linda's digitized all of those. We have 3 of the 10 proofed and put in the Power Library, and you can flip through those old scrapbooks and read about these deaths from the late 1890s into the early 1900s. And back then, when they kind of laid it all, the obituaries were pretty interesting back then. So that one isn't noted here because it's pretty new, and we do in time hope that we plan on adding the other 7 and digitizing the marriage scrapbooks. But I want to take you into the Power Library, and I have these little sheets that if you want to pass, if anyone's interested in taking one, it's just kind of a real simple guide, like this is where you go to get to the Power Library. It's basically powerlibrary.org. I mean, if you Google Pennsylvania Power Library, you're probably going to come right to it. And over here, throughout it, you can find a lot of the resources Terry was talking about. But what you want to go to is PA Photos and Documents, and actually, if you follow that sheet, you're going to come to it anyhow. And then now you can look by subject if you're just interested, and these are basically collections built by libraries, community colleges, some historical societies throughout Pennsylvania. And they categorize them by subject, but they also categorize them by the institution or the place that has built the collection. They have genealogy collections. Everything there, you can kind of, as I scroll down, the different, and they're adding to it as time passes. So those are all the different categories. But then, if you want to see our collections specifically, the easiest way to do it is to view by institution. Click on the institution button there. And scroll down. And some of the libraries, some of the places you can see have one collection. Some have up into the teens. And there we are with 8. Which, for a little library, as you can see, we're not doing too bad. And we could build if we had the time. So, these are our collections. And then, since we're talking about Maple Festival this evening, here's our Maple Festival Memories collection. You just click on that. And there's always at the top a little description about the collection. And we write that here. We come up with that and write it, telling, what is this collection all about. And then if we scroll down, this is the first page. They're alphabetized is the way they kind of landed there. So here we're seeing all the ones that are dated, that have dates at the beginning first. So we have a lot of car show pictures here. Then anything with the title antique. Now, which one looks appealing? Let me click on one in particular there, and you can kind of see a little more. Why don't we go on this one with the big crowd in front of the stage? If you click on more, you can see a kind of brief description there. If you go to more, it's going to bring up a larger image. Now, of course, whoops, we're getting two. Now, if you're looking at this, we're lucky we're looking at it on a big, I don't know why it's so whopper cocky there. Ah, now I'm rotating. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. There we go. It's bothering me it's not in the middle, but that's all right.
It's not used to being on that big a screen.
I guess. Yeah, you're not always going to have the luxury of seeing it on this big of a screen. And it can be challenging. I don't know. It can be challenging to view some of these things on a phone. I mean, a lot of people do it, people do everything on their phones these days, but if I'm looking at something like this, if possible, it is nice to at least be in front of a computer screen. So, if you scroll down, you can see the picture, and then if you click on the eye for information, it's going to take you to a description. All of this information technically is called metadata, which is basically a fancy word for descriptive text. And you might say, well, $5,000, that grant was $5,000. What did they do with $5,000? But for each one of these pictures, someone has to enter all of this information. You want to enter as much information as you can about every picture. Or if it's, Frank Lee's yearbook, as much information as you can. Because the more information you can enter about something, the better chance someone out there searching for car shows can land on the card. The picture of your card show. So, and something, if any of you decide to look through these collections as you have time, and you see, I would encourage you to do so if you're interested and able. And if you find yourself doing so, and you see pictures that have people it would be helpful for us to have that information, because over time we could add it. And the best way to do that would be, if you're looking through the pictures and you're like, hey, I know that girl or that guy, jot it down and let me know. You could send me an email, you could bring it in, but what I ideally need probably would be this alternative title. number. Because, you know, if you're going to ID someone, I need to know what picture you're talking about. So, and that's kind of our number for the image. You know, when it's,
Can you see that?
that's where I can find it in my computer and easily find it here. And then we've got subjects, you know, a picture like this.
Read it here.
I'm sorry?
I just asked him if he could read that.
Read it.
I can't see
Oh,
that.
From here.
Okay, yeah, it might be. We actually, part of a good chunk of the money for this project went to, I don't know if any of you know Beth, well, her maiden name was Holler, Beth Holler Page. She's from Springs. I know Jason would. She's been involved with the Springs Historic Society probably since she was like 5 years old. She lives in Gettysburg now, but she was able to do most of this work for us remotely. She spent a couple days here in the library working on some details regarding the project, but we would digitize the images here, upload them into our cloud storage, which is just a weird concept even to me in my head. But the cloud storage really is what allowed Beth to access the photos. We'd upload the photos into the cloud. She could drag them out of her computer in Gettysburg and do what she needed to do. So Beth sat there, and for every image she entered all of this. You know, if this picture, there are different subjects that pertain to it. Again, those are things that help people find the pictures online. You describe the picture. There we can see the contributor is the Pennsylvania Maple Festival, since they are the ones who actually had the photographs and graciously allowed us to digitize them. If you know the date, by all means, you want to include the date, what location we're talking about. In this case, it's Myersdale in Somerset County. You even describe what kind of image it originally was, and then the Maple Festival is the location. There are all kinds of details, and some of this you wouldn't be all that interested in. There we are as the Myersdale Public Library, the contributing institution, and that's one nice thing too about these projects. It really does get the library's name out there. To an audience that otherwise would never know that the Myersdale Public Library exists.
And it gets Myersdale out.
And it gets Myersdale out
And the
there.
Maple Festival.
And in this case, yeah, the Maple Festival. So it's a pretty neat thing. The rights statement all comes down to copyright, and I won't even get into that because as a library worker, it can be a real challenge. I mean, you have to respect copyright by all means, but it can be a challenge. The copyright statement on these basically says the images are still under copyright. Most of these, aside from the ones that Dave Breen took, to the best of our knowledge, were taken by festival volunteers. So the festival was able to give us permission to use them, and it basically says that for educational purposes, you're free to use this photograph. But we do want them to credit the library. Now, say you're in the collection. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to where we were originally here. And hop back into the collection there. I went back too far. And you want to, who wants to search for a particular, don't be too specific, because our metadata, I mean, it's good, but it's only so specific. Someone throw out something related to the festival that they're interested
The
in.
parade.
The parade.
Because I saw some of them was in the evening and some of them was in the daytime.
I know, at one
Yeah.
point it was in the evening.
Yeah.
Anyone,
Yeah.
Jan, do you remember?
Yeah.
I don't know, that's kind of comical to me, because even today the weather's enough of a challenge, but it's like,
During the day.
okay, let's do it at nighttime in March. I don't
See, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
and
I
then
think for a while there were two parades. There was a fireman's parade
mhm.
and then a regular parade, and I do think one of them was an evening parade.
Huh,
I know
okay,
on the one you could see the temperature was like 33 degrees
yeah.
during the night, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that would have been cold to be out there waiting for that.
There was one
Like
festival.
about
I
There
know
was-
when I first came here, my
1980
mom,
maybe, something
my mom
like
and
that.
dad came down, and it was in the evening, it was not the fireman's parade, and, no, and it was cold, it was.
Cause it was dark, I remember watching the.
It was cold.
I think the coolest one I've ever been in, I don't know how many years ago it was now, but it was like 18 degrees. I mean, and I just remember, Martin and I were marching with the Sons of Union Veterans and their auxiliaries, so we're like all dressed warm, you know, I've got jeans on under my big fancy dress, and I mean, we were dressed warm, but it was really cold. And then, God love them, you know, you always have these little girls twirling their batons. Now, granted, they were dressed warm, you know, I mean, they had on their sweatpants and everything, but they were in front of us. And we came by the bank, and it's registering 18 degrees, and I'm thinking, how are those girls even twirling batons? You know, it's like, and what are we doing marching in a parade? It's 18 degrees. So now, well, I don't know, we'll see this year, right? The
Yeah.
past couple years have been pretty kind to us, so we'll see. But, okay,
jinx
so
us.
Maggie
Do not
wants
jinx
to...
us.
Maggie wants to look for the parade. Now, one thing if you want to search, and you're in a specific collection, make sure you check the search this collection box, because if you don't, and put in parade, it's going to bring up any pictures throughout all of the collections related to a parade. So we want to make sure that we just look. So there, I put in parade, I made sure I clicked on search this collection, and I hit enter, and there we go. There we go, those are our parade pictures. Now, when they display them, and you can see there are actually 68 pictures in the collection, they're somehow related to the parade. These pictures are cropped a little bit. When you're viewing them like this, you actually have to click on the picture itself to see the whole image. Now here's one, Doughboy at Night Parade. So if we click on that, we'll see the whole image. Kind of a neat picture taken from behind the Doughboy. It looks like it was raining then. That person's, their umbrellas in that picture. So let's see, if we scroll down, what's going to tell us about that picture? And see, Beth included everything there in subject, parades and processions, monuments, statues, because the Doughboy's in there. It's all about like how descriptive can you be, so people can, you know, find the pictures they might be looking for. Betty actually, Betty Christie, who works here, her and her husband, when Barry was still living, they were really involved with building the library's first collection, that one with the early 1900 photographs. And Betty was the one who Barry did all the scanning and Betty did the descriptive text, which Betty would be good at that. So we don't know the exact date on that one. It's probably the mid-80s. So we can, if you hit the back arrow, we go back into all of the parade pictures there. Again, now here, you know, like in this one, you can see there's, well, I know our current Maple Queen's not old enough to remember when that church was. You're probably the only one. You're probably, all the rest of us are old enough to remember when the church, at least vaguely remember. I vaguely remember when Sheets came to town.
It's moved out of the process. Harold Hemmings Street.
About
That Atlantis. I remember Joe, the young, you know, like, yeah, okay.
There's somebody else, because I
Is
pulled
that
that one out.
Is that your
See, you guys are already kind of spotting.
Larry Cogan's there by the stop sign looking at the thing, that's him.
See, you already know people. So, I mean, you all can help us with a project like this. I mean, the project's kind of done. but it's not completely done because, I mean, we'll never identify everyone in all these photographs, but it would be helpful if we could. So yeah, and the other thing you notice about these old parade pictures is, boy, they went all out with the floats. The floats were
Oh,
great.
yeah.
Ah, there it took us back. Well, I guess I did. But like let's see, I don't want to spend too much time on this because you can all explore as you wish. And if you don't have access to your own computer or the internet, and you're able to come to the library, which everyone made it to the library tonight, we have patron computers that you're welcome to use. And
And we'll even help you.
yes, we will help
Don't
you.
you think we should look at the Queen's contest?
Or the queen,
Huh?
or Maple Queen.
Well, I was
Maple
getting ready to type in Queen, and for some reason I typed in parents.
Parents.
It didn't-
What kind of subliminal message is that?
That
It
would've
like
been
didn't look
interesting.
like Queen to me, but okay.
Okay. Maybe because I'm thinking about the Queen, and I kind of know your. Well, I vaguely know your mom. Your mom's Becky, right? Okay. I was good friends with your Uncle Scott.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. So maybe that I don't know. I don't know. I typed in
Same
parents.
neighborhood.
Let's type in Queen. Okay. And let's see what came up. All right. There's a Maple Queen. Does anyone remember when the Queen was crowned in Festival
Festival
Park?
Park, yeah. 82
Should we
was.
click on it? Let's see what's going on there. I mean, we know what's going on, but. Oops.
So did they start the like festival with the coronation?
I don't know. See, and that's a, you know, you can almost like take one picture and look at it and end up as Rhonda knows when she sits there on Wednesdays with my mom and Luann. You know, you can take one picture, look at it, and it leads to like a whole discussion. Like, okay, so when did they do this, and what, you know? And I mean, there we have the manor while it's still white. I was on the board when they decided to paint it.
I think in 82 it was actually in the fire hall up in the, for some reason. It was on Friday
Didn't they
night
used to do it? Yeah, didn't they used to go
and
to
the festival
Catholic
started on
church?
Saturday.
Why are you remembering 82 though?
The Queen was from Turkey Foot.
Okay.
Mom was teaching at Turkey Foot.
Oh,
And we went to the coronation.
okay. Well, this is 79. This one's 1979.
So maybe it was in,
You can
and then I
zoom in
know
on that
next
too,
year when
can't you?
she,
Yeah.
Yeah.
she did the crowning at the festival park the next year. So I don't know if the year that she was crowned, whether it was rainy or something, and they moved it to the inside on the front. Yeah, I'm
Well.
not sure.
Maybe, yeah.
It was, the coronation was independent of the contest years ago. They picked the queen and then later on do the crowning.
Right.
They didn't do it right after the.
A bunch of Irish people there.
Right.
Okay.
We do that for like the big ones, like the 75th, we did a separate coronation, the 50th, the 25th. We do a separate coronation for those, but like
Yeah.
the normal ones, they just get,
So if we make it to 100,
yeah. Well, next year's 150 for Myers
I
now, so
know.
maybe we should celebrate.
it is. It is. Everyone keep that in mind. Hopefully next year we have
Probably
some neat
for the kids.
presentations here related to that.
I can't see.
Um,
it.
And now, the bad thing is sometimes when you zoom in, it gets a little fuzzy. When we scan slides for a project like this, we scan them just as they are. We don't doctor them up. You know, we could actually make this picture look a lot better with today's the kind of photo editing equipment or software that pretty much any computer comes standard with. But for archival purposes, you scan it as it is. And I'm sorry, I'm only so good with the laptop.
Just real clear right
Whoops.
there, yeah.
Whoops, that's kind of the back end of everything. See how scary that is, right? You need to be a techie to understand all that. If we click out of that. And now see, I didn't realize, yesterday when Rhonda was looking through these pictures, she came on one there, Queen Pam. I never gave it any thought, but she's like, that's back when the float was a keeler. And I'm like, I guess it kind of does look like a keeler. I never gave it any thought. There are a lot from that year. This one's kind of cute. I don't know. And Seven Springs must have been a sponsor, clearly. Queen's huddled on the stage. There's a big Seven Springs sign up there. Seven Springs is even there on the front of the podium. And I mean, it's interesting too to see how the dresses have changed. You know.
Oh, yeah.
Lace was big then. But yeah, you can, I mean, it's enjoyable to look through all these photographs. Whether you're looking online or whether you've probably all enjoyed looking through photographs before, through photo albums, or this is just another way to do it. This is something we were talking about yesterday. I mean, at some point, you know, I guess it was Amtrak, right? Used to come through town and drop. I mean, they brought people in on the train.
On that one,
When did they do that exactly? I think this one is.
on that one picture, it shows the train, it shows this gentleman helping the lady off, that's Dr. Thomas.
Okay.
Helping him step down off.
See, you'd be good at this.
Cause I'm like, I know him.
You'd be good at this. This is 1982.
Yeah. I'm from the store, they would come in.
They actually would bring trains into West Salisbury.
Really?
Yes. And they'd unload them, take them up to Kimes Camp and by bus.
Okay.
But they did that for several years.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
My
Kimes-
coworker was talking about Kimes Camp just the other day. I work with Carolyn McKinney, works in the Pennsylvania room with me. Her family had Cunningham's meat packing, and she said they used to take meat and sell it at Kimes Camp, sausage and sell it at Kimes Camp, and I'm like, what? You know?
Kimes
And-
was the place. I mean, it
Yeah.
was the camp. They had a band, like they had a live, band that played, and
A real organized band, remember?
that's before me, but I've heard the stories.
Sam and Hess Ingalls, Hess was his son.
Yeah.
I'm related to the Kimes.
Okay.
I'm Bid Hirsch's daughter.
Okay. I do
So-
bid. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And you say that kind of sarcastically.
No, it was kind of cute. It was just
Okay.
a couple of people that got together, and Ted and I had made some kind of a string instrument with a wash tub,
Okay.
and he played that. And Hess would play the piano, and he only knew how to do one thing, but man, he was into it.
He practiced that one thing over and over.
Well, and I
That
think
was
the
a big
Queen,
draw. It really was.
They did this like all through the season or festival time or?
No, it was just like maybe twice during that time.
Okay.
They would bring in 2 different trains. And in fact, they used to have the Maple Queen get on at a certain point and go so far with them.
Broke down the one time.
That's what I was gonna say, the queens and the,
The court.
princesses all went on the train on
Okay.
Saturday
Yeah.
afternoon. I don't know, they go to DC or come back?
I don't know, I know they used to meet the train when it came in up at the.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the neat thing too about, an event like this, or even just coming here to the library and looking through the photographs with 1 or 2 other people. One person might remember something that another person doesn't, or now there's a nighttime shot. Yeah. Now that's like another version of the keeler there. Yeah. All right. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at these pictures all night. But that's kind of a little introduction. See, some of you, yeah.
Tree was tapped on.
Yeah, this one's, actually, this is in front of, this is in front of Yoder's. Now, we messed up a little bit on this photo. Can anyone tell me what's technically wrong with this photo? If no one notices, it'll make me feel a little better. That's what's now Yoder's guest house. It's backwards. It's flipped. When you're scanning negatives, it can be, especially the 35 millimeters. Now, the older negatives that we acquired from the New Republic, it's a little easier to tell which is the shiny side and which is the dull side. The 35 millimeter negatives. So if you put them in the scanner the wrong way, upside down, you get an image, but it's reversed. And sometimes you don't. The only time it's really obvious if there's any kind of writing, like actually, if that picture was a little higher, we would know it right away because that sign says Market Square. I know this because there is another picture in there that shows the sign, and when you scan the negative the wrong way, any writing is going to be backwards. So you're going to know it right away. But if there's no writing on the image, you don't necessarily know.
Does it bother you that window is on that side?
What bothers me
Just turn it upside
it's
down and then it'll be
backwards.
on the other
And
side.
we could flip. I can't, it's not,
Photoshop it.
Just rotate that. Just
Well,
rotate that. So what if they're standing on their heads?
but I can't, well, I guess I could, but then it won't stick, you know? Like, to really fix it, I have to do it outside the power library and put it back in, which is a process in itself, trust me. But, so yeah, so that's like a quick little, I don't want to keep you too long with all these, but that's the power library. It's not too tricky to navigate, and like Terry said, I mean, we're always happy to help. I mean, if you're interested in this, and say you're at home giving it a try, and it's aggravating you, don't get too frustrated. Give us a call, stop in, and we can kind of help. One of the other things that this big grant funded was, it bought us a scanner. It bought that scanner, which was almost $300 to scan and digitize the negatives. And then it also bought us accessioning software, which in a nutshell this is something else Beth did with all the time she spent on the project. It's basically software where for each image, each and every image, she enters all the data into our software. She enters the image, which when you're in this software, this isn't the software itself, I just took screenshots of it, pictures of it on my computer for this. There we can see the image, but if we don't enter the information like that somewhere electronically outside the power library too, we don't always know what we have, I mean, having that software essentially lets the library know what we have. And trust me, there are thousands of things back in that Pennsylvania room that aren't accessioned and may never get accessioned, but we're plugging away at it. I have another volunteer, Barbara, who's really handy with the software, and she's now my accessioning queen. So, where do we head from here? I don't know how many of you are aware, probably most of you, the New Republic is no longer, after 122 years, we no longer have a weekly newspaper. And when they closed, George Menser, who in a previous life I worked at the New Republic, so I go back in time a little bit with George, and he gave the library all of the photos that they had over there. And it was kind of funny because, he didn't think at first they had many photos. And they were like 2 or 3 boxes, so I went over and got them, walking down. And then a couple days would go by, he called, Jen, I found more. Okay, George. And then a couple days, and then And funny, by the time the last time I come, I'm like, please don't tell me more
Don't call
photos.
me again.
Don't tell me more photos. No, I'm glad we have them. Our big challenge is, well, Pennsylvania room's getting full. And not only do we have photos, but we have negatives. And there are a lot of duplicates. Yeah, that's Paula's year. And this picture I thought was cute because this is like, must be like the early days of Photoshop, right? Like they were getting creative with this picture. Yeah. You've got the girls and you've got the crown overlaid over it. I don't know. Someone was getting.
They probably cut and pasted.
And some of our we've started the Way We Were Club here at the library. There are no membership dues. We have, as Rhonda says, we don't even have officers yet, although we've joked around about it. But no, anyone can join the Way We Were Club. You come in, you look through pictures, you try to help us. Rhonda's our chief organizer. You look through them. If you know the people, you help us write on the back. We have special pencils, that won't hurt the photos. And then we have people who scan the negatives. So this photo we have, well, four of the 7 ID'd. Paula, if you're from Myersdale, you see Paula and you know it's Paula, whether it,
She never changed.
No, she really, that's Paula, right? You just know it.
We just have to follow all of them.
So let's see. Did I get, okay, there's that one. So, yes, this is kind of when we first started. There's my sidekick in the PA room, Carolyn, with Rhonda and Luann. She's another volunteer. Linda and Lynn, they, some people are really good. Some people I'm amazed. Like Linda Brenneman, she's like, she'll look at them and this is so-and-so and this is so-and-so. And I'm like, Linda, she's like, yeah, but don't ask me what I had for lunch yesterday, She can ID most people from 40 years back, but. And we've got people scanning, all those folks. Terry's son Dan is scanning, Linda McDonough, Karen Oakes, our manager up at the train station, the stalls. There's Linda Marker again. I recruit her to do just about everything. She's actually working, I think, there at that particular moment on scanning some of our tornado photos, which if you come back on June 1st, you'll see some of those. But these are the boxes of negatives, and we got about 7 of those. And you don't realize, they're negatives, so they are like paper thin. I'd love to know if we ever finish, how many tens of thousands. It's got to be well over 10,000 images. And then, of course, I am starting to notice over time, obviously there's some overlap between the negatives and the photos that were printed. Here and there I'm finding that now. But the negatives are great in their own way. And I just thought I'd share, these are all negatives that we've scanned. And they're kind of categorized in batches. These were in a Maple Producers batch. I think that photo is in Somerset somewhere because there are other ones like it. And for any of you who are on Facebook, we've been trying to share a lot of these over time on our Facebook page. So, keep an eye if you're on Facebook on our Facebook page. And
They did 2 tree tapping ceremonies.
No, see, I didn't know that.
They did one in Somerset, and then they came here and did another one the same day.
Well, that would explain some of
They
this.
did a tree tapping ceremony in Somerset with a parade, then they came here and did a tree tapping ceremony and a dinner here, like the Legion or something for the dignitaries.
That was at the courthouse, is where that tree used to be.
There are some other ones of
Yeah,
those.
you can see the sailors on that one too. Sailor Motors is on that one.
Now see, this is one, if you threw it in upside down and scanned it, you'd know right away. Because that sign would be just screaming out right at you. You did it wrong. Okay, so, we want to know, Linda McDonough's been scanning this batch as of late. We call that backpack guy. What, was that some early pneumatic?
That is the first powered back tapping machine. So it went from the brace and bit that they're using on the right. That's the first motorized one. I have one of them. I actually have 2 of them.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
And They're heavy.
They're heavy.
Well,
My
there,
dad
you
used
could have
them
brought
a
it.
little bit, and he said they are hot, they're heavy. He said it takes two people, one to get it on you, get it started. And he said, once you had it running, he said you used it for half a day, and you were wore out. And they were notorious for the vibration on you, and then they would slop gas down your back.
So don't get near an open flame.
Suffer. That'd be
That
suffer.
sounds,
Yeah.
when do you think, like, what roughly time period, Jason, you think maybe they were used?
After World War II, because they are on a military backpack frame, and
Okay.
they were built by King. So they're King motorized tackle. And it's a little gas engine with a belt drive and a power shaft that comes around your side. And we have one on display at the farm.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to make a special trip up there to see that. Is it from, I mean, it's from your family, like it,
Yeah, well, yeah, I have photos of my grandfather
With
one
it?
on, yeah, yeah.
that
And
couldn't be.
My dad always said it was a little bit better than drilling it by hand, but not much.
You're like almost not worth it. So, and it's things like that too, though, in all seriousness, it can help you kind of date a photograph.
Yeah, so that would
Right.
have been late 40s, early 50s.
Okay, so that photo's a little older than I would have
Yeah, and
probably guessed.
They were
Yeah.
commercially manufactured.
Grandma.
Okay. Do you know how much one might have cost back then?
That I couldn't tell.
Okay. Yeah, it's quite the contraption. Now there's one with the, you can see the courthouse in the background. An interesting thing about the bigger one on the left. Now I posted this picture on Facebook. Someone said that was Miss
That
George.
was my grandfather
Okay.
with the axe.
With the axe, George Kime, right?
Yes,
Okay. Okay. So that
and the
person.
different types of collection items they used to use.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. Sometimes there can be a lot to see in one photograph when you really dissect it. This one, that house back there on the left, I'm almost 100% confident that would have been Judge Francis Couzer's. He was a Somerset County judge. That house was originally where the Somerset Post Office now is. I mean, which obviously was just not far from right there. But then when they built the post office in the 30s, I kind of dug into. We actually have a collection, and we're partway through digitizing these, and I'd like to show them in the Power Library. A woman brought us a collection a few years ago. Her husband. The house was originally where the post office is now. When they built the post office, they moved it just slightly. And then when they when they wanted a parking lot at the post office, they tore it down. I think that was like late 70s, 80s. This woman's husband helped tear down that house. And he found, and I think it was in the attic, don't quote me on that, he found a little collection of old family letters. So we have a collection of letters handwritten between some members of Judge Francis Couzer's family. And now see, had I never dug into Judge Francis Couser when we got these letters, I wouldn't have had any clue that that's really almost, I think, has to be Francis Couzer's home, which is now gone. So that's just an interesting side note about that house. But yeah, in the other photo, it's nice to see the courthouse. And see, I had no clue that there were two tree tappings. One in, I wonder how long they did that.
Ask Ron Brown.
Okay,
Ron's a wealth of information, but he can probably tell you,
yeah.
you know.
Someone just mentioned his name the other day, and in the same sense, a wealth of information. So, again, I just can't, and anyone who's involved with the festival knows this, you can't be grateful enough for volunteers. I mean, there that one day we've got Linda and Lynn looking through the photos, we've got the other Linda. Clearly we figured out Linda was a popular name, you know? Anyone who's like late 60s, early 70s, I think you had a 50% chance around here being named Linda. But Linda McDonough is scanning. Luann, what she's doing there, again, it's great to have all these, and it's nice that those negatives are categorized. but, you know, if someone calls or comes in and says, do you have a picture of such and such? It's a lot easier for me to maybe know if I have it, if I've got it in some kind of digital format. So Luann's taking the categories and putting them in a spreadsheet for me. So if someone comes in and says, do you have a photo of the old Hartley mansion? You know, I can kind of more, rather than pulling out 7 boxes of negatives, I can, at least for now. In my perfect dream world, one day all these pictures are accessioned and in our software that the grant bought us. That our library board has, you know, agreed to keep supporting after the. And Terry came up with that name. We were trying to come up with a name, and we thought the way we were was like neat. And here are a couple parade pictures. That one is actually of the Salisbury Centennial Float. And you can tell, obviously, the photographer of the years stood at the. I guess the judges' stand has probably maybe pretty routinely been. I mean, it's a logical place, right in the center of town for the judges' stand. But most of the photos, you know, you have a lot of the same background. The bank, Knights Electric, and they really did up the town too, didn't they? With all those, all those banners and. There's the Shirt Factory had a float. There's their float. Nagy's Dairy. All the little kids on the Nagy's Dairy float. That looks like was one of the nighttime shots. This one's neat. Someone climbed up on the roof of the building that was where the park now is, the old Nautical building. And what's interesting about this one, when you look way off into the distance there, technically you're looking into Summit Township isn't nearly as, you know, there's not as much out there. There's not as much out there. But that's kind of an interesting shot from the rooftop. Now those photos, the ones I just flashed through, you're not going to see those in the Power Library. They're in the PA room. You know, we're sorting through them, but yeah. Those are ones we've just gotten in the past few months from the newspaper. And it's funny because I don't know if anyone knows this is George Bitts Bill. He's got like 3 different names when you include his nickname. Bitts Mossholder. So he was coming in for a while and looking through the photos. He was good with the sports photos. But here he found himself, he was one of the little kids in the 1959 Queen's coronation. So, you know, you're just not quite sure what you might happen upon when you're looking through the photos. And there's the large image of that photo. Now, apparently, what did they do the coronation at the courthouse too? I mean, I don't know. It was labeled coronation, and that's the courthouse. That's not Myersdale. But there we have all the little kids identified.
Somebody had said too at one time, the contest used to be at Cochran Auditorium in
Johnstown. Yes, it was.
I've heard that too, yeah. And there's an old photo by Mon Studio of the 4th Maple Festival in front of the Colonial Hotel. So that's the end of our introduction to the Power Library. Like I said, it's not too hard to find it if you took one of the little sheets, and if you try to get in there and find the collections and have any trouble, just let us know. On May 11th, I'm going to do a similar program here about the history of the library when they built and dedicated this building in late 84, early 85. Lloyd Wilson, he was the Lutheran minister in town. He was into photography, and he documented all of that in photos, and we also digitized those 35mm slides and put them as a collection in the Power Library. And we have some wonderful old scrapbooks going back further in the library's history, and I'd like to in time digitize and add those too. And then our third presentation tied in with all this is going to be on June 1st, which ironically is kind of sandwiched right in between the 2 days that the tornadoes came through. 25 years ago it's been since the tornadoes hit the area in 98. And Beth Holler Page, when right after the tornadoes went through, she still lived in this area at that point. She interviewed about 6 different people about their experiences with the tornadoes and created oral histories. And when we were doing the Scan PA project, she brought us her old cassette tapes. Because that, in 98, that's how she did the recordings, on cassette tapes. And we digitized those. So we're going to share some little clips from, I hope to, if I can, get the tech right, and find some of the best clips from those oral histories. But then I'm also going to include a lot of the photographs. We've already scanned, Linda's already scanned for me a lot of the photographs that were taken by the newspaper, which ironically half of them were probably taken by me because I actually worked at the newspaper with your Uncle Scott at that point in time. It's just hard to believe that was 25 years. So if you're able and you'd like to come to either of those programs, they'll be similar to this one. And I thank everyone for coming. I laid out some photos here and these are just a little sampling. And we have some maple trees.
Yes, don't forget the food.
Yeah, I'm gonna get some maple trees. So if you want to look at any of the photos, and I have some cookies and little sugar cakes. Does anyone have any questions? And thank you all for sharing your memories. That's kind of, a big part of this, to get people, talking about what they might know that we don't. And there's clearly a lot that I'm sure all of you here, in looking at those photos, know that we didn't as we scanned and digitized them. So the more information we can gather on them, the better.
Good job, Jen.
See, that's part of what I've been doing. All right, I'm going to go get treats.